This is the raciest dual cab ute ever to be sold in Australia, the new Ford Ranger Raptor. We've covered the Ranger lineup pretty extensively already to this point, but this is our first time driving the new generation flagship Raptor ute on the road. So we'll get to all the important stuff in this review, things like practicality, value for money, safety, whether you get the full deal this time around or not, and also fuel efficiency. But first of all, we're going to start on-road because we haven't done anything on-road in this new generation Raptor just yet. Remember, you can read my full detailed written review at the CarsGuide website. The link's in the description. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Now, let's get to it. There's a lot to cover. Now, I spent plenty of time driving the last generation Ranger Raptor. I did a towing test, I did a load test, I spent time in it off-road, and let me tell you, this is a very, very different vehicle, and in a good way, because this sort of takes what was already the benchmark performance ute and resets that benchmark, puts it in a different postcode altogether, because it is phenomenally good at a lot of things. Now, obviously, the big talking point is switching from diesel to petrol, and what a petrol engine it is. And this is a 3-litre twin-turbo V6 petrol, and that might seem an odd fit for a dual cab ute that weighs in at just under 2.5 tons. And in some ways it is, but in other ways, it's just so right. It really does offer immense power and torque. It's smooth and linear. It sounds really good as well. And the thing with the sound is it really depends on which mode you're in. The thing that's surprising me is that there are just so many different configurable elements to the drive experience. Sure, you've got the simple drive mode controller and you can adjust things that way, but there are buttons on the steering wheel so you can set it up how you want it. And it makes it feel like you've designed the car, which is really, really interesting. And the fact that you can do that just means that, well, you're going to get more out of it because it's more configurable. You can make it more yours. Now, the 10-speed automatic transmission is also really, really good. I haven't really had any issues with it on this launch drive loop that they've put us on, and it seems to choose what gear it should when it should. So that's all you can really ask of a transmission. The steering is also much better. It's seemingly got a lot more feel to it. It's more direct and more accurate. And that is the result of Ford Australia's, well, determination to make this new Ranger Raptor more fun to drive. Obviously, one of the biggest talking points about Raptor is the Fox shocks, and they are phenomenal in this new generation model. They just offer a level of comfort and control that no other ute in this segment matches, and they also are just super duper adept at dealing with lumps and bumps in the road surface. You hardly even notice that you're going over bumps. They're that good. And that's even with 18-inch wheels with all-terrain tires, which might usually throw up a fair bit of interference into the cabin, but just like that, speed hump, didn't even notice it. Amazing. It just has a more planted feel on the road. It's got obviously a longer wheelbase and wider track than the existing Ranger Raptor, and it does feel like it's suctioned more to the road. So I've just put it into sport drive mode, and that firms a few things up, makes the suspension a bit firmer, the steering a bit more decisive, and also obviously the engine and throttle response a bit more edgy, plus the exhaust. Yeah, it gets louder. It is a really nice sounding engine from the cabin and on the outside as well. And for anyone who's wondering whether this feels like a real sports ute, I mean, it's not going to feel like an SS Commodore ute or a XR8 Falcon ute, but that's not what it's about. It's about being fast, but also being four-wheel drive. And we'll get to that soon. First, we should take a look under the bonnet so I can tell you just a little bit more about this engine. The new generation Ford Ranger Raptor has done away with the existing bi-turbo 4-cylinder engine and been fitted with, well, frankly, a more fitting engine. This is a Ford performance-built 3-litre twin-turbo petrol V6 engine which hasn't been offered in any other Ford product in Australia to date. As with the other Rangers, there's a 10-speed automatic transmission and what Ford calls full-time four-wheel drive, but you can still choose high or low range, and there's an auto mode for sealed road four-wheel driving as well. A couple of other important considerations if you are looking at a Raptor: you're not getting the same level of towing capacity as the regular Ranger models, 2.5 tonnes instead of 3.5 tonnes, and also you have to pay a penalty for this, well, sporty setup when it comes to payload capacity and also gross combination mass as well. So you need to really do the maths and figure out whether it's going to fit your lifestyle. But it can do things that none of the other Rangers can do, and it's about time we head off-road to just see what it can do. So here we are driving the Raptor where it's designed to be driven. Well, partly. This is the off-road loop that Ford's designed for us on this launch event, and it sort of gives you an idea of what the Raptor is capable of. We're in low range at the moment, and I guess the thing that I'm learning is that there are a lot of modes and you have to do a lot of thinking about what mode you need to be in to get the best out of this car. Now, it is still eating up everything we're throwing at it, and we've also had a bit of time over some moguls that did that fine, up some steep hills up and down, no issues there either. And also it was a bit of a handful and a lot of fun on a high-speed closed loop that Ford designed for this vehicle. Now, obviously we'll get it through the garage at some point later on to give you an idea of what it's like on some of our more typical tracks, but it's so far very, very impressive. Things that I like about it, obviously that suspension. Well, the new version is much more tied down. You feel a lot more planted on the surface below, and it's easy to pick where you are with the steering wheel because it's very accurate in terms of the steering response. And also you've got this great camera that you can see forwards. If you are unsure of where your tires need to be, that's a really good way of getting them in the right spot. The engine, obviously, it's epic. It sounds amazing. In Baja mode, as you go up and down some steep hills, you really get the most out of it. The transmission, low range. It's been a bit choppy at times, and also not quite as smooth as I thought it might be when upshifting. There's a bit of a shunt every now and then. All in all though, I am still very impressed with it. Get used to doing this, because there's a fair chance if you buy a Raptor you'll be seeing this, the fuel filler cap, quite a bit. The official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for this 2.5 tonne petrol V6 Ute is 11.5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is quite a bit, but you'll be doing very well if you achieve anything close to that. Over this launch drive on-road, I saw a figure of 14.5 litres per 100 kilometres, and it was more than double that when it came to the off-road testing that we did. No surprise really, I told you it'd be high. It's got an 80 litre fuel tank, and no long-range fuel tank is available just yet. And based on my on-road testing, you'd need to go back to the servo every 550 k's or so. Yikes. The most expensive Ford Ranger Ute ever? You bet. At more than 85 grand before on-road costs, this is hardly going to be for all budgets. And when you consider what you get in the cheaper Ranger Wildtrak, it might be hard to justify the big price step up. We're talking 15 grand or so over the V6 diesel. You can read my detailed review for a breakdown on all the standard inclusions. The link is in the description. Even so, you do get specific items for the Raptor, including those Fox shocks, different wheels and bumpers, and extra drive modes, plus that engine, of course. But is that all worth it? Tell us your thoughts in the comments section below. Does it feel like more than $85,000 worth of ute on the inside? Well, it certainly feels different to the other Ranger models that it's based upon. Obviously, there are a bunch of carryover elements like this big 12-inch touchscreen and the 12.4-inch screen in front of the driver. Those are all fantastic, and we sort of They do take some learning, obviously, but we've covered that off in the Ranger reviews. But let's talk about the things that make the Raptor specifically a Raptor. Obviously, there are some color highlights that you can see just bouncing in here, and that's designed to make it feel like it's unique and special, and it does. This orange, it's called Code Orange. You'll see it everywhere throughout the cabin. It's around the vents, it's on the steering wheel, it's on the stitching, it's on the seats, and it really does add some sort of zest to the cabin. Speaking of the seats, they are specifically designed for the Raptor and inspired by the Raptor aircraft, apparently. So they're designed to be really supportive and comfortable, but also cushion you when you're going over bumpy stuff. So they do have a form and function to them. They look great and they feel really comfortable too, nice and supportive. You might notice that at the top there's a bit that says Raptor. They call that the halo, which is kind of cool. And it's also mirrored at the bottom of the steering wheel. So there's a nice sort of, I guess, synchronization between some of the elements of the cabin. It just feels really nicely tied together. Now let's talk about the steering wheel, because there are functions here that you get that you don't get on any other Ranger. There's a bunch of different mode buttons. So you've got a Raptor save button, which means you can set the car up how you want it and hold that button and basically it'll save your settings. So you can set the steering response, the suspension, the exhaust. There's a bunch of other things that you can calibrate to your needs, and that's one of the things that make it stand out compared to the other Rangers. It's just a lot more customizable and it feels a lot more special. Now, let's check out the second row. Ford has also redesigned the rear seat. It's designed to be more comfortable for backseat riders with a bit more support than the standard Ranger seat. And look, it does feel a little bit more supportive, but it's not like the front seats when it comes to support. That said, you will be able to fit 3 adults across at a squeeze. You're more likely to be able to fit younger people or smaller people quite comfortably. Speaking of which, there are ISOFIX points on the window seats and top tether points on the window seats as well. So keep in mind, you might not be able to fit a child seat in the middle if you want to use top tether or ISOFIX, so you can't fit a child seat in the middle. There's also a flip down armrest here with a couple of cup holders, which is nice, and there's mat pockets on the backs of the seats. Now, speaking of the backs of the seats, this one is set for me. I'm 182 centimeters, 6 foot tall, and I've got enough knee room, but not heaps. These sports seats do eat into the space a little bit, so my knees are sort of brushing the edges of the seat where they don't in a Ranger Wildtrak, for instance. That said, I think it's comfortable enough. There's also a pair of directional air vents down here, which is good, and a couple of USB charge points too. So all told, not too bad. Now, if you're going to use your Raptor Ute for Ute duties, you probably want to know a bit about the tub, and there's a bit to talk about. The good news is that it's basically the same as the other Rangers, so it's still a long and wide and deep tub. You can fit a pallet between the arches, which most other Utes can't, but obviously the Ranger Raptor is challenged when it comes to payload capacity, so it might have to be a light pallet. It is good though because it comes with this spray-in tub liner, which is nice and durable. There's tie-down points on the edges of the tub as well, and a charge point, a 12 volt in the back. And on the tailgate, you've also got a ruler that runs along the length, a couple of clamp points so you can do work on the tailgate as you're going. It's pretty neat, there's no doubt about that. But one thing that you might miss are the steps in the edges of the back of the tub that the other Ranger models get. They're not there because the exhaust is in the way, and I mean, it's probably a decent compromise when you consider how good it sounds. But you might find that it is quite tall to get in and out of, especially if you've got this still raised. And even if you do have it lowered, yeah, you might have to do some yoga before you can get in and out. But anyway, all told, it's a decent truck. Unlike the previous generation Raptor, you now get the full complement of safety equipment on this new generation model. And that includes things like forward AEB, adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, all that stuff that you should expect when you're spending, well, close to 90,000 bucks on a Ute. And one of the other things that this spec gets as standard are these great LED headlights. They're matrix LED, so they can point around corners and do all sorts of tricky stuff. They're very neat. Ford backs the Ranger Raptor with a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is pretty good. But if you need more warranty years, then you'll probably want to look at the likes of the Great Wall Cannon, which has 7 years of warranty, or a Mitsubishi Triton, which has a conditional 10-year warranty if you service your truck with Mitsubishi. Now, when we're talking about servicing, you've got 12-month, 15,000 kilometre intervals, which is pretty generous, and also a very good capped price service plan for the first 4 years or 60,000 kilometres. About $330 a service, which is actually really good considering this is basically a performance car in a ute body. So, is it worth 85.5 grand? The answer, yes, if it fits your needs. Now, if you know that you're never going to tow more than 2.5 tons and you're never going to be worried by a lower than average ute payload, then yeah, go ahead, order one, because it's a really, really impressive vehicle. In fact, it is kind of genre defining because it is a performance vehicle that just happens to be wearing a ute body and can do all sorts of crazy things on and off the road. I'm really impressed with it, and if you're wondering what my score is, here it comes, and thanks for watching.